Good evening, and welcome to the NAACP virtual event. My name is Abba Blankston. I serve as the Senior Vice President for Marketing and Communications for the NAACP. We are excited about the guests for tonight's panel and look forward to an insightful discussion for your consideration. If you want to stay involved or want to support the work, the social justice work of the NAACP, dial *8 if you're on the phone to go to naacp.org to volunteer. For our phone participants, if at any time you have a question, you can dial *3 to get into the question queue. And if you're watching on social media, on YouTube, Twitter, you can leave us a question at NAACP. With that, I would like to introduce our moderator for this evening's program, NAACP President and CEO, President Derrick Johnson. President Johnson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Abba. And I want to thank everyone who's tuned in to join this conversation. If you have a question, please press *3 to get in the queue. I have had the privilege over the last couple of weeks of watching Fargo. For me, the concept of organized crime have always been intriguing. But more importantly, it really sets the stage around a statement that I've made time and time again, that race is a social construct, and that wherever there is a lacking of economic opportunity, an economy will be created by the community that's been impacted. And so I am happy to have this discussion with the director and members of the cast to open up the dialogue about the show. And I can tell you, if you have not watched this show, tune in to FX or Hulu to watch it. It is outstanding, and we are happy to partner with FX at this moment. So I'm going to start off with the director of the show, Noah Hartley, and talk about the perpetual battle of control between underworld communities that's set in 1950 Kansas City. And as a Detroit native, I understand the comes and going of big city, I won't call it mob, economies that's in competition with one another. What were some of the complications that you ran into as you set the scene for the African American community that was in a fight to establish an underworld economy? What were some of the challenges that you ran into in developing the character?
Well, I think it was about this collision in Kansas City of both this Italian American criminal organization. Again, the mainstream economy was not available to them. With Chris's group, his family, let's call them. And the idea was that neither of these two groups was considered acceptable or American in 1950. You know, there's a scene in here where Jason Schwartzman, who's the head of the Italian American family, rushes his dad to a private hospital, and they're turned away because they in 1950 are not considered white either. And I think that was what was most intriguing to me, was to tell a story in which almost none of the characters were white by the mores of the day. You know, I was very interested in the American experience of people who were not like me.
Yeah. You know, it was fascinating to watch this struggle between communities. But what was most intriguing, and I experienced this growing up, is oftentimes the leader of the underworld are individuals who actually have very strong business acumen. Chris Rock, your character, Lloyd Cannon, actually should have been a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. What was it like to play that part, and how did you view, you know, that part in light of what you experienced growing up?
I grew up with a lot of, I grew up around a lot of guys like Lloyd Cannon. Guys that sold drugs, but had a hardware store. Ran numbers and were butchers. had prostitutes and had, barbershops. So I've been around that thing for pretty much my whole life. Um, yeah, it wasn't. Put it this way, it wasn't a character I had to do a lot of study on. I just wanted to kind of get the look right and get the demeanor right, because these guys are not, at least out in public. They don't, they're not about fun and games. It's all about being taken serious. Um, yeah, could he run a Fortune 500 club? Yeah, it's just that world was not open to a guy like Loy at the time, so he improvised and he did the best with what he could. So
Well,
I had a ball playing him.
yeah. Well, what I find most fascinating, I'm used to you and comedic, your comedic persona, whether you're playing a comedic role or your stand-up comedy. How did it feel to play a serious individual in a dramatic series as opposed to what we're used to seeing?
First of all, I was just elated. That's the word, with the opportunity. I don't. I'm a comedian, so 90% of my offers are comedic. And the 10% that are dramatic, I mean, you just don't come across material like this that often. So, uh, I'm about the experience and I'm about stretching myself. And yeah, I guess primarily I'm a comedian, but comedians need experiences to be funny about. Not that I'm ever going to talk about, make fun of this, but let me try to answer your question. I love Fargo. I love Fargo. I've watched every season. I've watched every season, multiple times. And I watched the first season of Legion. I'm on season 2 now. So I was just a big fan of Noah, and it was just one of those situations where whatever he says, if Noah Hawley wanted me to, hey, I got this idea, and you're gonna be on a pogo stick in quicksand. I'm like, okay, let's see what he's got. This guy's really good. I'm sure it'll turn out into something good. So I just followed Noah, and it worked out for me.
One of the idols for African American actors. Everyone, I mean, I can't remember all of the parts you played in because I've seen you in so many parts. What was the funniest part about your character is your name, Dr. Senator. You know, and it was funny to me because I grew up in a neighborhood where we had friends named Bucci and Poo Poo and all of these names. But the most beautiful thing about your character, you was perhaps the smartest person in all the rooms you walked in. Extremely loyal. I thought the role was great. I was actually upset when some things happened. Not to give away the movie. What do you think motivated somebody like a Dr. Senator to be so loyal, although he was really the smartest guy in the series?
Well, he I think that, and then first of all, thank you for acknowledging my prior work and history. Appreciate it. But I think Noah has written a character that has a wonderful, wonderful backstory. Uh, I relished in that, and part of that backstory was his observation of his limitations, his understanding of his limitations. And he realized at some point that no matter what he does, the color of his skin is always supersede him, mostly in a negative light. He tells a story about being the lead attorney, major case uh, uh, trials after the war, criminal trials after World War II, and the responsibility he was handed uh, during that time, and only to find out that he was handed that uh, uh, as a means for someone to get the jolly, so to speak, off by putting him in front of a man that would despise being questioned by him because he was black. Well, once I think that information, once he was informed that that was his lot in life, he found a way to fit in where the feeling in the organization wasn't predetermined.
So Doyle, I will be honest with you. When I heard that Fargo was coming back with another season, like, well, a lot of people are not going to watch that. I mean, it's about the other Fargo, not something that really placed in the center of the movie the experience of African Americans during the 1950 and them not being victims. What was the inspiration for you to direct this series? Because for many African Americans, they wouldn't connect a good series with Fargo's if they want to see an African American experience.
Um, we'd had a character called Mike Milligan. It was played by Bokeem Woodbine, who was this very iconoclastic character who worked for a Kansas City mafia, um, and but he was such an eloquent, odd guy that I started to think, well, where does that guy come from? Who doesn't seem to fit in any world? He doesn't seem to fit um, in the African American community. He doesn't seem to fit in certainly in this white criminal organization. And I started to think, well, what's the origin of a character like that? And my mind went to this moment, which was just an image that appeared to me of these two um, crime families trading their youngest sons, and this idea that part of Mike Milligan's story was that he was raised in many different communities, that um, these two criminal organizations, in order to keep the peace, had traded their youngest sons as an insurance policy. And so Chris Rock's character has to raise this young Italian American boy, and Jason Schwartzman's character has to raise Chris's son. But whereas Chris's character takes this child in and gives him a seat at his own table and has him treats him like one of his own children, Jason's character puts Chris's son in the attic, basically, with this Irish American who has betrayed his own family to be with the Italians, but gets no respect for it. So he basically puts Chris's son in the attic with this Irishman, who swears to protect this boy over everything. And I thought, well, that's kind of what an American is. It's in this case, it's this hodgepodge. It's this melting pot. It's this black man who was raised by an Irishman in an Italian family. It just seemed like the collision of all these cultures was a really rich place to put a story to explore this idea of what is an American.
Yeah, yeah. Emilio, your character was great. I think this is the first time I've seen you play. I look forward to all of the wonderful parts you're going to play moving forward. Really smart. It was upsetting when I've seen you get paddled in the beginning of the movie. It's like, no, that should be outlaw. We can't do that anymore. What was important for you about this role?
Mm. Um, getting the role at the Rita, when I originally auditioned for it, I didn't understand how impactful this role would be. It wasn't until I was on set and I was playing the scenes day by day. And, it gave me a different perspective. It opened my mind differently. I'm so thankful and appreciative to have played a role like Etherita, and for my younger siblings to watch it and, it boggles their mind. And, I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to have a voice and to have the audience think about things differently, because I didn't know that Irish and Germans and Jewish people weren't considered white during that time. I didn't know that they didn't have a chance at the American dream as well. I was learning things while I was playing that role as well. And to be in a show that brings so much light to people, that brings so much light to about things that we don't think about on a daily basis, it means a lot to me. And it definitely has inspired me to educate myself more outside of what I've known, outside of what the education system has taught me. Um, it's made a big impact on myself. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity and what I'm going to do with what I know now.
Yeah, you just amplify why your character is really narrating and is in the whole show is really viewed from your eyes, which is, and you just stated, just your personal experience and the show experience. We're gonna ask the audience to hit *3 to get in the queue to ask questions. I'm gonna come back to you, Glenn. In terms of the evolution of African American characters in Hollywood, where do you think we are now in terms of the type of parts that we're able to secure and roles we can play?
I'm very, very uh, surprised, but happily surprised at the types of different roles we're able coming out of the Hollywood scene now. These were the kind of roles that back in the day we were trying to get the studios and get filmmakers to write about and to produce stories. Yeah, that could be about racism, but from a very different point of view, from our point of view. Uh, and so I see so many different roles. I see, monsters, in spooky movies, we go horror movies, and we live through the whole thing, we're not killed right away. And, different shows with black women in wonderful, so I've seen a big change. You got to remember that I came on the scene when Diana Carroll was first introduced to the American audience with her own show. And it was like, what? This going to happen? I mean, it was the most revolutionary thing, ever heard of. And so to come this far and to see these shows that are being done and to see this young lady at this young age take on such a monstrous role, I mean, a fantastic role, that that's change. That's change. That's
Yeah,
change worth keep to grow on, And hats off to that young man in my lower right corner, I think it is, uh, Mr. Harley, who had the courage to delve into these characters and place them on a palette with all the different colors that he and shades that he has done. Hats off to him.
yeah,
But that's my homeboy. I don't expect anything different.
got it, got it.
Back
So
at you.
this is to anyone want to answer. What parallels do you see between uh, Fargo of 1950 Kansas City and today? What parallels do you see as relate to race relations or ethnic group relations or people relations?
I know Chris loves answering this question.
You know, I don't believe in race relations. A relationship is between two people that are equal. What happened between black people and white people, it's basically a domestic abuse. And if somebody stops beating your ass, you wouldn't call that progress for the person that got their ass beat. So, right?
The
You
tweetable
wouldn't
moment. Go
say,
ahead, say more.
you just wouldn't. You wouldn't call that
That's right.
progress. You would, right? So the term race relations is just some term that black people have bought into that actually takes white people off the hook and makes it look like we have, like there's some equality to this, to this, to this, you know, this thing we have, this situation
But
that
I
we're
take
in.
everything.
There is
I take
no
it all
such
back. Everything.
thing. There is no such thing as race relations. That's like it's it's a race situation. Uh, the big difference would be Loy actually has options now that he didn't have in 1950.
Yeah.
Or he has few more options. You know. Also remember in 1950 there's black lawyers, black doctors. You know, black people running the Negro leagues, making in some instances more
Yeah.
off of baseball than white people. So you know there are parallels, but you know there's also you know black people have been doing amazing things for hundreds of years. Let's never lose
Anyone
sight
else?
of that.
I would say, Playing Etherita, her biggest thing was educating herself. She didn't have the same she didn't have the same access to an education as the white kids, and teaching herself French and buying the French textbooks, old used French textbooks from the white kids, and whereas now I myself, when I was in middle school, I went to a French Montessori school. I had that opportunity to learn a different language without having to go and hunt a textbook down to teach myself. It was right there in my school. Myself and all the other kids had the opportunity.
Good stuff. Good stuff. You know, instead of warring ethnic factions, you know, how can we use uh, whatever message we want to derive from Fargo or one other message we want to deliver to create a society that accepts people? Because race is truly a social construct. You know, if you had a crystal ball, um, Glenn, what would you say we should be doing now to look forward, but use the examples of what happened in Fargo as a grounding place to start from?
Well, I think the overall theme was, what was a wonderful thing. Chris and I did a scene in this piece where we go to a banker. And we
Yeah,
go to the banker with $1 billion idea. The idea of creating a credit system, a credit card system. And we're looked upon like, we got spinach on our teeth. And the thing being, where do you get first of all the gumption that you can create something, and then who do you go to finance this idea, to support your idea? And that's a theme that I think should be taken from this, is that we still have to find our own way to support our ideas so that we can move forward, uh, instead of moving forward at a snail's pace. We need bankers. We need investment groups of color. We need the business men and women who will support some young person coming through with a brand new idea, something that's never been up, someone to take a chance on us. And that scene was I think a hallmark scene, you know. And I love when later he goes and sees a billboard. Lloyd Cannon sees a billboard, and there it is, the Diners Club or whatever that was card, big poster billboard saying that. I don't know if you've seen that part yet. Did I give something away?
mm.
But
It's
Couple
still
of
coming,
minutes.
but
Couple. It's coming.
it's well,
Yeah,
spoiler alert. But that's the way that is, you come up with an idea. We see it in music, in our music all the time. Our cultural ideas, you know, stolen. And so we have to be about the business of making our ideas realities by supporting them.
Yeah, if I may,
Not
I mean,
always.
Mhm.
I think that's so much of what this show is about this year is about power and respect. You know, you have a show filled with characters who are fighting over a lot of things that can all be reduced down to respect.
Mhm.
The respect to be given equal options, the respect to be given equal treatment, um, and also power. You know, there is this dynamic that I thought was interesting for Chris's character, which is he's in this awful position between power and safety, where he thinks that in order to keep him and his family the safest, he needs the most power. When in reality, he's fighting a system in which the more power he has, the less safe they are. And yet, how can you make that mental leap to go, I should accept less power to be more safe? It's an awful sacrifice to have to make.
Yeah.
And so I think those kinds of themes and ideas are really at the heart of the show, um, which is about power and respect.
Yeah. So the beginning of each episode, it speaks that these events are based on a true story. So Noah, are these events based on a actual true story and set of individuals during 1950?
It's not. It's a lie. The first thing that I do every hour is I lie to you, and I apologize for that. But that is the way that the film was set up. Joel and Ethan Coen made the film Fargo, and at the beginning it said this is a true story, even though it was not a true story, and we just stuck with that.
Sounds like American history. Much of it is a lie, right?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So, so I want to open it up for audience questions, but I do want to come back to you, Emira, because I've watched the first two episodes with my daughter, who
Hmm.
loves your character because your character is so inquisitive. What would you say to young teenagers in terms of the experience of playing the role? That's a time period and what you had to do to understand what it would be like to be a 1950s teenager.
You know, I didn't go into it like researching 1950s racial injustice. I didn't I kind of accidentally researched it. I was reading this book called The Autobiography of Asada Shakur, who was
Love it.
in the yes, yes, love her. And she was born in 1947.
Hmm.
And so in the book, talking about her experiences, she would have flashbacks from when she was a child. And, she was as inquisitive as Etherita. Um, she had to educate herself outside of the education system. And, reading that book, I don't know. And it's crazy because I had that book for about 4 years and I was always in and out of it. And then around the time I was auditioning for Fargo, I just so happened to just start reading it again. And she had flashbacks of her childhood that was similar to Etherita's experience. And so reading that book helped me understand Etherita's take, and it helped me embody this role because she had a lot of obstacles in life. She
Hmm.
was part of the Black Liberation Army, but what she went
Hmm.
through to get there and things that happened afterwards. And so it really gave me a great perspective because I don't know what it feels like to be in the 1950s. Um, and she would be the only Black girl at predominantly white schools. And so I'm like, wow, like how coincidental is this? And so that really helped me with embodying Etherita and understanding that time and what it was like going through those hardships.
Yeah, that's actually Autobiography of Assad is one of my favorite books, and I'm glad you didn't do
Mm-hmm.
like she did in real life and run away and sit at a bar stool and all of that stuff. But I can really see
Right.
that. Yeah. So Abba, do we have any questions in the queue?
Yes, we have a couple of questions on the phone and also on social media. Folks, if you have a question, please dial *3 to get in the question queue. Right now we have a person from DC. Go ahead with your question.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. My question is, were you in the production during the recent civil uprising? If so, what impact did that have on the mood of the set?
I'm assuming that's
We had
directed
shut
to anyone.
down. Yeah, we had
Yeah.
shut down in March during the pandemic when we at the very beginning we still had 2 or 3 weeks left to film, and we went back to Chicago to finish the series in this back half of August. I wasn't up there, but I know that Chris and Amiri were up there, so maybe they can speak to what it was like on set.
I mean, first,
Go ahead,
ladies
Chris, and
first.
then the married. Ladies first. Yeah.
I'm not really sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a hard question to answer. I mean, of course, it was on my mind and everybody's mind, but we're had masks on and COVID test and basically trying not to die. I mean, we're talking 3 months ago, guys, right? Would you say? What was that 3, 4 months
Hmm.
ago? So every month back with COVID is scarier. It actually, you know, we're still scared of getting COVID, but you know, 4 months ago, if you got COVID, it's a lot more serious. So all I'm saying is, yes, it was on our minds, but the COVID was just as big. It was just a crazy time. It's hard to explain.
Yeah. Abba, do we have any other questions in the queue?
Yes, we have Seattle, Washington. Go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you for taking my question. My question is, how did you prepare for your roles and stay in character in light of all of the social injustices that were going on during your filming? Did that help you at all in your roles, or did that hinder you? And if so, in what way?
Uh, Definitely didn't hinder. Um, I guess it helped in the sense that you knew there was an urgency to the piece of art we were making. Uh, Unfortunately, we've been black for 55 years, so a lot of this just isn't news. It's part of the experience. Sometimes is like this being like my father. Horrible things would happen, and he had to go to work, and work didn't stop. You know, my father, my mother, my grandfather, they saw far worse things than I'll ever see, and they had to keep it moving.
I would say, as far as getting into character, for me, that process isn't hard because uh, I did the work, with my character. I know who my character is. I was very confident in playing Etherita. So when it was time to start my scene, it wasn't hard.
Man?
Well, no, my Roles like that, I'm always in character because I'm not far from any of those places. I'm not far from dealing with the quest for the American dream. It's been a long, long journey. So those kinds of depths are really kind of very just under the surface. Uh, uh, at my age now, it's about what's available for my grandkids, you know. So I add that into the equation now. So there might be a different kind of maturity, I guess, that comes with looking at the nature of things. And so I'm not as volatile as I once was, you know. But I'm certainly aware of where we are in our struggle, you know, and what the contribution of different films or movies or television shows or art uh, that I take on, where does it fit in the scheme of things? And I think this is a wonderful piece where it fits in the storytelling of America.
Ava, do you have any more questions in the queue?
Yeah, we have a question from social media. So even though you couldn't predict the George Floyd moment, the show addresses current issues. How does that happen when the show is set so many years ago?
Well, I mean, in some ways, this is a conversation long overdue, but it's also a conversation we've been having for hundreds of years. And we're in a very acute moment, but unfortunately, I think had this show premiered a year ago or the year before that, or even 5 years before that, it would have felt just as relevant.
Next question, Ava.
So there's a question about voting and the importance of voting. What do you think folks should be doing now as we head into Election Day?
Well, voting. I mean, I'm here in Texas. I voted already. I would vote again if I could. Allowed to.
People should be voting. People should, if they can vote early, they should vote early.
Yeah,
People.
definitely. I definitely agree. People should definitely be voting. People feel as if, why does my vote matter? Why does I want? But it makes a huge difference. So everyone should definitely be voting and be a part of change. Be a part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. So as we begin to wind down the conversation, 11 episode limited series. Limited mean limited, but is there a possibility that there could be a season 2?
Yeah, we can do another. I every time I finish one, I always say I don't think there'll be another, but now that this is season 4, that seems disingenuous. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, there certainly can be. What's exciting about the show is that I don't yet know what time period it'll take place in, what the story will be about, but I love this that I get to paint on is that I'm making a show about this country we live in, and there's no shortage of things to say about it.
Yeah. So, Emira and I, we haven't talked about it, but we agree. I think you should go ahead and direct the next movie about Osada Shakur. She was going to play the young Joanne Chesimard, and so we're working this out now. So you're
Please,
directing
I
that.
please.
I like it.
I
I
would
am
love
in.
that.
I am in.
But at any rate, any final thoughts from each of
Hope people
you?
watch
Well, I'll
What
just
Fargo.
should
get.
people walk?
Yeah.
Yeah, go
Watch
ahead.
Fargo. Watch
People
Fargo.
should watch
I
Fargo.
want
It's
to.
really good. It's amazing. And
Really,
after you finish this season, watch the other three if you haven't already. It is the best show on television and has been for quite some time.
well, I want to say,
You,
as the old timer on the
Oakland.
set, that the work that my fellow actors who are on here with us that they do, both Chris and Amari, is just wonderful, wonderful work. And it was a pleasure and a joy to work with them. And with Noah, his instincts are so honed that it makes it great for an old guy like me in the business this long to get excited still about having to go to work to be on a piece like Fargo.
Yeah. I'm just able to have the conversation. So much of what storytelling is and culture is trying to join the debate that we as citizens of this country and this world are having, and you know it's it's very heartening to have created something that feels important to people and vital and of the moment that we're in, um, without hopefully being political. Political used to be a word that meant engagement with civic discourse, and now it just means you've chosen a side. And it's not my goal to choose a side. I want to tell stories to everybody. Um, and I think so it's important to try to tell stories about experiences that are mine and not mine, and a representative of the people around me, since that's where empathy is born.
Yeah, Imari.
So appreciative. I can't say that enough. And I feel like I have a big responsibility to do my part as a fellow young Black woman and to, be a role model and to definitely shed light on the topics that were brought up and the themes that were brought up involved. But basically, I feel like I have a really big responsibility. And sad to say, I mean, it took for Fargo to really open my eyes and my perspective. I don't regularly have these conversations on a regular day basis with my girlfriends. We're just young, we want to party and be young. And now, with me having so many younger siblings and me having the followers I do on Instagram, I want to be a part of something much bigger. I want my voice to be heard. I want people to look up to me, and I want to shed light to equality, to following your dreams, because it has been a journey for me. And to see how far I've come, and I started this journey at 12, nothing is hard to achieve. It might take some time, but you will get there with consistency and persistence. And I want to let that be known. So thank you, Nova, for having me. I appreciate it so much. It was nice working with you guys.
Great. Well said. Just
Well, you should also join
perfect person to end.
NAACP. You should join the
Oh yeah.
NAACP. That man's the organization that if you want to get involved, been around a long time, and
Oh yeah.
that's not a bad place to start. Just thought I'd throw that in.
Look, I appreciate you, and absolutely, this has been a treat for us as NACP, a 111-year organization. We embarking on a new approach on how we really leverage our legacy to build a future that's important for all of us. Race is truly a social construct, and Fargo laid it out as clear as I've seen it projected on the television or big screen for the NAACP. How people see us in the street on the big screen is how we are treated in the street. And so Noah and all of the cast of Fargo, thank you for giving an accurate depiction of who we are, our diversity, our struggles, but how we work hard to overcome those struggles. It has been a pleasure as we move from this moment to go from peaceful protest in the streets, as we've seen all summer, to power at the ballot box. But when we leave the ballot box, to leveraging that power to make change through public policy to undo structural racism. So, as the presidency of NAACP, I want to thank FX. I want to thank the cast for joining us. And I want to thank all of you who will be watching this over the next several days on our social media platform, as well as those of you who tuned in for this moment. I did all I could to channel my Oprah. It didn't go well, but I really appreciate the value that the conversation projected. And the star of this show was the young actress. And I look forward to many successful parts that you will play. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
The phone cast has ended. Thank you for participating. Thank you for calling. Goodbye.